Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my October 2020 reading wrap-up. If you're not already aware, I do weekly entertainment wrap-ups of everything I read, watch, and listen to, but today we're just talking about the books. I also just wanted to point out that my last weekly wrap-up was my 200th wrap-up in a row, and I'm pretty proud of that, so yay me. This month I participated in 5 readathons and I didn't finish all of those TBRs, in part because I was moving, in part because I was overly ambitious, and in part because my seasonal affective disorder kicked in. You can't see it, but it's real dark and rainy and gross outside right now. As always, I'm going to start with the nerdy, hardcore stats and charts and then get into what I read. In October, I read 15 things for a total of 4,397 pages. That takes into account converting audiobook minutes to pages, so about 1,628 of those pages were actually about 47 hours of audio. The age breakdown for these books was 10 adult books, 4 YA books, and 1 middle grade book. I read 12 novels, 1 graphic novel, 1 novella, and 1 short story. This month, the majority of my reading was fantasy, followed by contemporary, with some nonfiction, science fiction, speculative fiction, and mystery thriller. If you adjust by page count, it doesn't change very much. This month, almost half of my books came from the library, but I also used other items I had physically or digitally to fulfill some readathon prompts. I read 5 audiobooks, 5 paperbacks, 4 ebooks, and 1 short story via a magazine website. The majority of my reads were in the 300 to 499 pages range, and nearly all of them were from the last decade. Most of these authors were female, with some male and a non-binary author as well. Most of the protagonists were also female, with a few male protagonists, some dual perspective books, and some ensemble casts. In terms of setting, a little over half of these books took place in the United States, but I also had reads from the UK, set in other worlds, and Trinidad. In terms of diversity, I had books that were queer, dealt with race, mental health, disability, and a few that were intersectional, and a few with no prominent diversity. In terms of star ratings, this month was super weird for me. I had 1 2-star read, 2 3.5-star reads, 9 4-star reads, 2 4.5-star reads, and only 1 5-star read, which was a reread. Let's start with my lowest rated read and work our way up to the highest, shall we? My 2-star book this month was Blood and Vinyl. This is a book that I picked up because I saw the author talking about it on Twitter and it seemed to have a lot of things that I would really like. And then it just so happened that it covered a lot of prompts in the Rocky Horror Readathon. Although it did have all of the things that it was talking about, so punk culture and witches and vampires and all this creepy and gory stuff was happening, and I appreciated that it delivered on those things, I feel like the storyline of this very short book would have been way better if it was flushed out to at least 3 books. So we were given more time with the characters to actually develop an understanding of who they are and really truly start to care about them, so we care when things happen to them. I definitely appreciated that we had queer rep and one of the main characters was trans, and we did have some adulty fun times, and strangely enough those were the scenes that were the most fleshed out and the most well written, so if all of the scenes could have been as fleshed out as those ones, I would have enjoyed this a lot more. On to my 3.5-star reads, the first one being the Midwich Cuckoos. This is the one that is from the 1950s. There have been movies based around this book. And our narrator in this book leaves his small town one day to celebrate his birthday, and when he comes back the next day, he can't get into the town. It turns out that for about a day and a half, the entire town has just stopped. And then suddenly everybody wakes back up again. Everyone in this small village is willing to just put that aside and forget it ever happened until all of the people with uteruses suddenly find themselves with child. I put this in the speculative fiction category because this was definitely a study in what would life be like if a situation like this happened. And the characters sat around a lot talking about the situation instead of being out in the situation very often. Of course, also being set in the 50s, there's some sensibilities that are just not my jive and some vernacular that I didn't particularly understand, but I did my best to understand it for a piece of literature from the time frame in which it was written. Next we have the short story I read this month, which was Blood Song by Brent Lambert. This is a short story about this character who is living in this different world. There are different types of magic in this world, and there's essentially a plague going around that is only affecting certain people with certain magic. Our main character has been affected as well as his partner, and he's given the opportunity to find some medicine for his partner, so he goes off to do that. That's about all I can tell you because it is a very short story, and if I tell you any more, it's basically the entire plot. What I liked about this is it both felt like a very inclusive piece of literature because there were different gender identities and sexualities within this, as well as it felt like something from the past. It felt like we were talking about the AIDS epidemic. And then of course you throw magic in the mix and that makes it very interesting. On to my plethora of 4-star reads, the first one being Hello Girls. This is a dual perspective novel between these two girls, one who is lower class, one who is higher class, and both of them have bad home lives. I didn't know exactly where this one was going. I kind of figured that they would both just be support for each other to get through these different horrible home lives, and then it went in a completely different direction and I kind of liked it. However, this got out of control very quickly, and for that reason I didn't see a lot of things coming, which I kind of appreciated. If you're looking for a feminist adventure tale that has some danger aspects and keeps upping the stakes over and over and over again, this is definitely one to look into. Next we have The Jumbies by Tracey Baptiste, which was my middle grade read this month. This is about a little girl who lives in Trinidad with her father. Her mother passed on a long time ago, but her father has always told her stories about her mother to keep the memory alive. As the story starts, some boys have taken her necklace, which used to belong to her mother, tied it to an animal who has run into the forest, so obviously she has to go in there to get it. However, this woodland area is one of the areas where you would find a Jumbie, and you do not want to find one of those. I really like this story because it had a lot to do with friendship and finding yourselves, but then also dealing with this magic being coming into your life and what you would have to do in that situation. This is the first in a middle grade series, and I feel like I'm going to have to read the rest of them now. My next book had a very outlandish premise, and that was Like Never and Always. In this book, our main character is in a car with her best friend, her boyfriend, and her best friend's boyfriend, who is also the brother of her boyfriend. Suddenly, they are in a car accident, and when she wakes up, she is in her best friend's body. Her body was buried about a week ago because she's been in a coma for a while. Knowing that if she told the truth about who she was, she would not be believed, she decides to just go along with being her best friend and has to kind of figure out what it's like to be her best friend, and comes to realize her best friend had a lot of secrets. She's also forced into this horrendous situation where she misses her family and she misses her boyfriend, who is openly grieving her, and now her body is dating her boyfriend's brother. That's a love triangle I never thought I would see. This was a premise filled with so many different situations, and I found it really interesting. This month I also read Where Dreams Descend. This is billed as Moulin Rouge meets Phantom of the Opera, and I love that. Our main character is the top-billed performing magician in this tavern, kind of in the middle of these magical woods, but she's never really been allowed to leave, and she hears about a magic competition somewhere outside of the woods, really wants to go to it. She has the talent, she has the will, and who doesn't love a magic competition, even if traditionally it's always been men who are allowed to apply. I really loved this setup and the whole atmosphere of this, and it's the first in a duology, and now I just really need to read the second book to see how it finishes because we were left on a cliffhanger, obviously. Next we have Something is Killing the Children Volume 1. This is a graphic novel where something is killing the children. We start off with this boy and his friends telling creepy stories and doing kind of a truth or dare type of situation. They go into the woods and he's the only one to come out. People in the town think that he was in on it, or he killed all his friends, or all of these things, so when somebody comes to town and is like, I'm gonna kill that monster, he's like, can I help? Obviously this is very high stakes, and then we wonder where she came from and how she knows that there's monsters, and there are going to be future volumes eventually, and I'm going to have to read them. Next we have Let Me Lie by Clare Mackintosh. This is about a woman who's grieving the passing of both of her parents. Her father jumped to his death about 1.5 years ago, and her mother followed about 1 year ago. However, on the anniversary of her mother's death, she receives a card that says, "Happy anniversary. Suicide? Think again." Which obviously freaks her out, because even if it's just a prank, who would do that? What I like about Clare Mackintosh's books is it tends to have the two different perspectives, one being a victim and one being somebody in the police force. Our second perspective is this man who used to be a detective and has since retired, but has come back to the force and is basically like a secretary there. He's no longer a detective, he's not supposed to be doing detective work, but when this woman comes in with this complaint, he kind of figures nobody else is going to have time for it, so he looks into it himself. Like all of Clare Mackintosh's works, this one is twisty and turny, and people are in trouble, and you just kind of figure it out as it's happening, and I really loved it for that. Next we have Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is the first in a companion series about these 3 different sisters, and this one is obviously about Chloe. At the start of the book, she's out for her daily walk, almost gets hit by a car, her life flashes before her eyes, and she's not very impressed with what she sees. She decides that she is going to write a list of how she is going to get a life, and that's starting with moving out of the family home and becoming more independent even though she has disabilities. When she moves into her new flat, she meets Red, who works in the building, and they don't really hit it off at first, but then he starts helping her with her list. I really love this book because you could see where both of these characters were coming from and why they were so guarded about being interested in anyone, let alone each other. I live with some chronic pain myself, so I'm often worried that people are going to think that I'm a jerk because I'm short with them when I'm in a lot of pains, and I try really, really hard to make sure that's not the case, but sometimes your voice just comes off as though you are mad at people, even though when you're just mad at your own body. This was fun, flirty, beautiful, sexy, adventurous times, and I cannot wait to read the next book. The last 2 books on my 4-star list are a duology, and that's The Killing Moon and The Shadowed Sun, so I'm just going to talk about them together. This is a fantasy duology by N.K. Jemisin that takes some inspiration from ancient Egypt, but then adds magic, and it's definitely not ancient Egypt, it's a different place altogether. And this society thrives on something called dream blood, which is collected from somebody when they are dying. It is a magic that is then used to heal people and that type of thing. People train for years before they become gatherers, which are the people that take the dream blood when people are passing. And there are definitely a lot of risks in this type of career. These books take place about 10 years apart, and what I really enjoy is the second book focuses on characters that we didn't see a lot of in the first book, but then we still see some of the characters from the first book in the second book. I always feel like what I've said is more complicated than it actually is, but I think you got it. In the second book, we focus more on the sharers, which are the type of people in this magic society that do the healing. I can't say much more than that before getting into spoiler territory, but I really enjoyed the magic system. I really enjoyed the relationships between the different people in all of the books. And this has made me want to go back and finish the Broken Earth trilogy because I read the first 2 books as audiobooks. My library didn't have the 3rd audiobook, so I just forgot to finish it. So now I'm gonna have to go back to the beginning because I read them a few years ago and I don't remember what happened outside of one major twist reveal. On to my 4.5-star reads, the first one being a novella called Depart, Depart. This is about a trans main character who is evacuated because there is, I believe, a hurricane. I read it at the beginning of the month, I'm pretty sure it was a hurricane that hit where he was living with his friends, completely devastated it, and now he's without his ID, he's without his friends, he doesn't know if they've survived or not, and he's in a stadium with a bunch of other people just trying to survive. However, he owes his survival of that event to basically the ghost of his grandfather when his grandfather was a child. This little boy appeared to him and told him that he needed to go to his car immediately, so that's what he did, and that's why he survived. This very short novel packed a punch because this character was at the intersection of being queer and trans, but also Jewish, and kind of understanding more and more about what that means. We have environment as antagonist, but then we also have a group of people living in the same stadium as him that are homophobic, transphobic, white supremacists, gun-toting, capital T Texans. This is written by Kern, who is also a booktuber, so I will leave their link down below. My penultimate book is If at Birth You Don't Succeed by Zach Anner, who is a celebrity I had never heard of before, but he is very funny and I enjoyed learning about his life. Growing up, Zach went on quite a few adventures, always tried to make his friends laugh. Sometimes his humor wasn't my favorite, but who didn't tell really terrible jokes when they were younger? He decided, back when Oprah Winfrey was running a contest where people could pitch show ideas to her, that he wanted to enter with a traveling show, specifically as what it's like to travel as somebody who has a physical disability. Due to a trick of how his name is spelt, 4chan really liked his entry and pushed it way up the list, which got him on the show. That, and I imagine just from picturing it, it was probably a pretty solid entry. This is a very frank memoir. He lays down a lot of his personal experiences in it, and I very much enjoyed it. Occasionally there was humor that I didn't appreciate because it was punching down to other marginalizations, but again, it seems like he's growing and learning as a person. So while I will point out that sometimes the humor in this book rubbed me the wrong way, I can also say that I really enjoyed this book overall. On to my 5-star read, which is a very weird sentence because I usually have more than one 5-star read in a month. I think this is the first time I've only ever had one 5-star read, and it was a reread, so no matter what, I would be talking about this one at the beginning of my 5 stars because I always give a chance for something else to be my favorite book of the month. That being said, that reread was Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. I reread this as an audiobook for the first time. I read this book 2 times previously this year as the advanced reader copy, and I just wanted to listen to the audiobook, 1, to listen to the audiobook, and 2, to see what had changed between the advanced reader's copy and the finished copy. I have talked about this book at length. I actually made my first ever full-length review about this book, so I will link that in places, but what I want to say about the audiobook, in case you didn't see my weekly wrap-up about it, is the audiobook is wonderful. They got a trans narrator, and there's an interview at the end between the narrator and Aiden Thomas that is definitely worth listening to. And it's definitely not too late to pick this one up if you haven't already, because I am personally celebrating Triple October, so to me, it is still the spooky months. If you want to hear me talk more about these books, or other books for that matter, the playlist for my weekly entertainment wrap-ups is always listed down below. If you've read any of these, please let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you're on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that is down below, as well as the link to my PayPal and my Amazon wishlist in case you would like to buy me a book. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!